The twin sons of Kethvora painted the forest in shades of gold and amber as they began their slow descent toward the horizon. The trees here grew taller than any on Earth, their bark a deep purple, their leaves shimmering silver in the fading light. It was a beautiful world, wild and untamed, and it belonged to the Varani. Nira pressed her small body against the rough bark of an ancient tree, watching her siblings train in the clearing below. Her golden eyes tracked their movements with a mixture of longing and pain. They were so fast, so graceful. Their muscles rippled beneath sleek fur as they pounced on practiced targets. Their claws extended, their fangs bared in mock attacks. She tried to shift her weight, and her twisted hind leg sent a familiar spike of pain through her body. The bone had never healed correctly after her difficult birth. While her brothers and sisters had grown strong and swift, Nira had remained small, limping, broken. Her mother, Sereth, stood at the edge of the clearing. The clan leader was magnificent, her silver fur marked with the scars of 100 successful hunts. She watched her children with pride, but Nira noticed that her mother's eyes never looked toward the tree where she hid. It was easier that way. For both of them, among the Varani, worth was measured in one thing alone: the hunt. A cub who could not hunt was a mouth that could not feed itself, a burden on the clan, a shame to the bloodline. The right of proving would come with the next moon cycle. Every cub of age would be sent into the deep forest to make their first kill. Those who succeeded would be welcomed as true Varani. Those who failed would be cast out, left to wander alone until the forest claimed them. Nira already knew her fate. She slipped away from her hiding spot, moving through the undergrowth with the only skill she had mastered: silence. She could not run, but she could move without sound. She had learned every path through the forest, every root that might trip her, every stone that might shift beneath her weight. It was the only way she could explore without being seen, without being pitied. The sound reached her ears before she understood what it meant. A deep rumbling, like thunder but constant, coming from the sky. She looked up and saw something impossible, a shape descending through the clouds, metallic and gleaming, trailing fire behind it. Nira had never seen a ship before. None of the Varani had. They knew there were other creatures among the stars, traders who sometimes visited the coastal clans, but none had ever come to the deep forest territories. The ship landed in a clearing half a day's walk from the clan grounds. By the time Nira reached the edge of the tree line, the clan's warriors had already surrounded the strange visitors. The creatures that emerged from the ship walked on two legs. They had no fur, no claws, no fangs. Their skin came in various soft shades, and they covered their bodies with strange materials. They looked weak, fragile, like prey waiting to be taken, but they did not act like prey. The one in front, a male with short dark hair and calm brown eyes, raised his empty hands and spoke in a language Nira did not understand. Beside him stood a female with hair the color of autumn leaves and a gentle face. She held a small device that began to emit sounds, and slowly, impossibly, those sounds became words the Varani could understand. "We come in peace," the female said through the device. "We are humans from a world called Earth. We wish only to study your beautiful planet. We mean no harm to your people." Sereth stepped forward, her warriors tensing behind her. "You land in our territory without permission. You speak of peace while trespassing. Why should we not treat you as prey?" The human female did not flinch. "Because we could be friends instead. We have much to offer each other." There was a long silence. Nira watched from behind a fallen log, her heart pounding. She had never seen her mother hesitate before. Finally, Sereth spoke. "You may stay, but you will be watched. If you threaten my clan in any way, you will learn why the Varani have no predators." The humans set up their camp at the edge of the clan territory. There were 5 of them in total. The male leader was called Ben Harris. The female with the translation device was Kate Morgan. There was a young male named Sam Ortega who worked with strange tools and machines. The others stayed mostly inside the ship, doing work that Nira did not understand. Days passed. The Varani watched the humans with suspicion, but the strange visitors kept their word. They studied plants and animals, took samples of water and soil, and never once threatened the clan. Some of the younger Varani began to grow curious, approaching the camp to stare at the aliens and their wonderful devices. Nira watched from a distance. She was curious too, more curious than any of them, but she could not risk being seen. A crippled cub approaching the strange visitors would bring shame upon her mother. So she observed in secret, learning what she could from the shadows. The night before the rite of proving was announced, Nira sat alone by the stream that marked the eastern boundary of clan territory. The water sank softly over smooth stones, and the moons cast silver light through the canopy above. She had come here to think, to prepare herself for what was coming. Tomorrow, her mother would announce the rite. The cubs would have 7 days to prepare. Then they would enter the deep forest, and Nira's fate would be sealed. She did not hear the human approach until the female spoke. "Hello there." Nira spun around, nearly falling as her bad leg twisted beneath her. Kate Morgan stood a few paces away, her hands raised in the same peaceful gesture her leader had used. In the moonlight, her hair looked like fire. "I did not mean to scare you," Kate said gently. "I was taking a walk, studying the night creatures. I did not expect to find anyone out here." Nira should have run, should have hidden, but something in the human's eyes held her in place. There was no pity there, no disgust, only curiosity and something else, something warm. "You are the cub who watches us," Kate said. "I have seen you. You are very good at hiding." Nira's ears flattened against her head. "I am good at nothing." Kate sat down on a rock by the stream, moving slowly, making herself small and unthreatening. "That is not true. I have watched you too. You move through the forest like a shadow. That takes great skill." "Skill?" Nira let out a bitter sound that was almost a laugh. "I cannot run. I cannot hunt. Among my people, I am nothing. I am worthless." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with pain and resignation. Nira had never spoken them aloud before, not even to herself. But something about this strange creature made her feel safe enough to admit the truth. Kate was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her eyes meeting Nira's with an intensity that made the young cub's breath catch. "On my world," Kate said, "we have a saying. Every creature has a gift. Sometimes it just takes the right teacher to help them find it." She smiled, and it was the kindest expression Nira had ever seen. "Let me help you be all you can be." Nira stared at the human, not understanding, not daring to hope, but somewhere deep inside her chest, something small and fragile began to glow. Asterisk. The days that followed were unlike anything Nira had ever experienced. Each morning, before the twin suns climbed high enough to wake the clan, she would slip away to meet Kate by the stream. Each evening, after the hunters returned and the fires were lit, she would sneak back to the human camp to learn more. Kate was a patient teacher. She never raised her voice, never showed frustration when Nira struggled to understand a new concept. She simply explained things again, in different ways, until the young cub's eyes lit up with comprehension. "You see patterns," Kate told her one morning, as they sat watching a group of small flying creatures migrate across the sky. "You notice things that others miss. That is a rare and precious gift, Nira." Nira tilted her head, her ears twitching with confusion. "But what good is seeing patterns? I cannot chase down prey. I cannot fight. Seeing patterns will not fill my belly or protect my clan. Kate smiled that warm smile of hers. Let me tell you about my people. Humans, we call ourselves. We come from a world called Earth, very far from here. And on our world, we were not the strongest creatures. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no thick fur to protect us from the cold. Then how did you survive? Nira asked, genuinely puzzled. The idea of a species with no natural weapons seemed impossible. We used our minds, Kate said. We watched the world around us. We noticed patterns. We learned which plants could heal us and which would make us sick. We figured out how to make tools from stone and wood. We worked together, combining our strengths, covering for each other's weaknesses. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, the same one she used to translate her words. This little thing? It took thousands of humans working together across many generations to create it. No single human could have made it alone. But together, we can do almost anything. Nira stared at the device with new eyes. She had thought it was magic, some power that humans naturally possessed. But it was something they had built, created, imagined into existence. You think I could learn to make things? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I think you could learn to do far more than that. Kate brought Sam Ortega to meet Nira the next day. The young human engineer was tall and thin, with quick hands and quicker eyes. He carried a bag full of strange tools and devices, and he spread them out on the ground for Nira to examine. She's got an engineering mind, Sam said to Kate after watching Nira study a simple pulley system. Look at how she traces the rope with her eyes. She's figuring out how it works before I even explain it. Nira felt heat rise to her ears at the praise. No one had ever spoken about her with such admiration. Sam showed her how levers could multiply force, allowing a small creature to move heavy objects. He demonstrated how wheels reduced friction, making it easier to transport things across rough ground. He explained the basic principles of traps, how the right combination of tension and trigger could capture prey without any need for speed or strength. On Earth, Sam told her, some of our greatest hunters never ran after their prey at all. They built traps and let the prey come to them. They used their knowledge of animal behavior to predict where creatures would go, and they waited there. Nira's mind raced with possibilities. She thought about the trail she had memorized, the patterns she had observed in the movements of prey animals. She thought about the narrow paths through the forest, the places where the ground was soft, the spots where creatures came to drink. I could build a trap, she said slowly, the idea taking shape in her mind. At the waterhole near the eastern ridge. The ground there is soft. If I dug a pit and covered it with branches. Sam grinned at Kate. See? She's already designing. But it was not just tools and traps that Nira learned. Kate taught her about strategy, about thinking several steps ahead of your opponent. She told stories of human generals who had won battles against much larger forces by using the terrain, by predicting enemy movements, by striking where they were least expected. The mind is the greatest weapon, Kate said. A strong body can only be in one place at one time, but a clever mind can see the whole picture. It can anticipate. It can plan. It can turn weakness into strength. Nira thought about her clan, about the hunters who spent their days training their bodies. They were powerful, yes, but they were also predictable. They relied on the same tactics their ancestors had used for generations. They never questioned, never adapted, never imagined that there might be other ways. Why do you help me? Nira asked one evening as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. I am nothing to you. I am not even valued by my own people. Kate was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Because I see myself in you. When I was young, I was different too. I did not fit in with the other children. I asked too many questions. I wondered about things that others took for granted. People told me I would never succeed, that I should just accept my place and stop dreaming. What did you do? I found people who believed in me, teachers who saw my potential and helped me grow. And I swore that if I ever met someone like me, someone struggling to find their place, I would do the same for them. Kate reached out and gently touched Nira's paw. You are not worthless, Nira. You have never been worthless. You just needed someone to help you see what you truly are. That night, Nira lay in her sleeping hollow, staring up at the stars through a gap in the canopy. For the first time in her life, she did not feel the cold weight of despair pressing down on her chest. Instead, she felt something new, something bright and warm. She felt hope. The rite of proving was approaching. In just a few days, the cubs would be sent into the forest. Nira still could not run. She still could not fight. But now she wondered if perhaps she did not need to. Perhaps there was another way. She closed her eyes and began to plan. In her mind, she saw the forest laid out like a map. She saw the trails and the water holes, the soft ground and the narrow passes. She saw patterns within patterns, possibilities that had always been there, but that she had never allowed herself to see. She was not strong. She was not fast, but she was clever. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The scouts returned at dawn, their fur matted with sweat and their eyes wild with fear. Nira watched from her usual hiding spot as they stumbled into the clan grounds, gasping for breath, barely able to speak. Drathern, the lead scout, managed to say, "Coming this way?" 3 days, maybe less. The word spread through the clan like fire through dry grass. Cubs were gathered up by their mothers. Warriors reached for their spears. The elders emerged from their dwellings with expressions of grim resignation on their weathered faces. Nira had heard stories of the Drathern, though she had never seen one. It was a creature from the deep mountains, a beast of legend that appeared once every 100 cycles. The story said it stood taller than 5 Varani standing on each other's shoulders. Its scales were harder than stone. Its hunger was endless. In all of recorded history, no clan had ever killed a Drathern. They simply ran, fled to distant lands, and hoped the beast would move on before returning to rebuild. But running meant abandoning the sacred grove, the burial place of generations of ancestors. Running meant losing the territory that the clan had held for longer than anyone could remember. Running meant shame. Sareth called a council that evening. Every adult Varani gathered in the great clearing, their faces lit by the flickering light of the central fire. The humans were there too, standing at the edge of the crowd, watching with concerned expressions. "We know what approaches," Sareth said, her voice steady despite the fear that Nira could see in her mother's eyes. "We have 3 days to decide. Do we stand and fight? Or do we flee as our ancestors did?" The arguments began immediately. The younger warriors wanted to fight. They spoke of honor and glory, of proving themselves against the ultimate challenge. The elders counseled caution. They had seen the bones of Varani who had tried to fight the Drathern before. They knew that courage alone would not be enough. "We cannot kill it," said Reth, the oldest of the elders. His voice was thin and cracked with age. "Our strongest spears will bounce off its scales. Our fastest hunters cannot outrun it. To fight is to die, but to run is to lose everything," argued Keth, Nira's oldest brother. He was the strongest of the young warriors, proud and fierce. "I would rather die with honor than live as a coward." "And what of the cubs?" Sareth asked. "What of the young ones who cannot defend themselves? Would you sacrifice them for your honor?" The council continued for hours, voices rising and falling, tempers flaring and cooling. No one could agree. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to flee. A few suggested splitting up. sending the vulnerable ones away while the warriors stayed to delay the beast. Ben Harris stepped forward during a lull in the arguments. "My people have weapons that might help," he offered. "We have technology that could hurt this creature." Sareth shook her head. "This is not your fight, human. We will not hide behind your strange tools. The Vorani have never asked outsiders to solve our problems." "It is not weakness to accept help," Kate said gently. "It is to us," Sareth replied. And her tone made it clear that the matter was closed. The council ended without resolution. The clan dispersed to their dwellings, fear and uncertainty hanging over them like a dark cloud. No one had a plan. No one had an answer. No one except Nira. She found her mother sitting alone by the dying fire, staring into the embers. Sareth looked older than Nira had ever seen her, the weight of leadership pressing down on her shoulders. For a moment, Nira almost turned away, almost retreated back to the shadows where she belonged. But then she thought of Kate's words. She thought of the human stories about minds that could see what others missed. She thought of traps and leverage and strategy. "Mother," she said, stepping into the firelight. Sareth looked up, and Nira saw a surprise flicker across her face. The clan leader had grown used to not seeing her broken daughter. Nira had become invisible through years of practice. "You should be resting," Sareth said. "The rite of proving has been delayed because of the Drathern, but you still need your strength." "I have an idea," Nira said. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue. "About the Drathern. About how we could defeat it." For a long moment, Sareth simply stared at her. Then something like sadness crossed her face. "Little one," she said softly, "this is not a problem that can be solved by thinking. The Drathern is a monster. It takes strength to fight monsters." "No," Nira said, and the firmness in her own voice surprised her. "It takes strategy. Mother, I know every path in this forest. I know the terrain better than any hunter. I've been mapping it in my head since I was old enough to walk. And I know a place where the Drathern could be trapped." She spoke quickly, before she could lose her courage. She told her mother about the narrow pass, a canyon where the walls rose steep and high on either side. She explained how the beast could be lured there using the scent of wounded prey. She described the unstable rock formations that lined the canyon walls, how they could be brought down to block the Drathern's escape. She outlined positions for archers on the high ground, places where hunters could strike without being reached. "The humans have devices that can break rock," she continued. "If we use them to trigger the rock slides at the right moment, the Drathern will be trapped. It will not be able to climb the walls. It will not be able to retreat. And from above, our hunters can attack its eyes, its mouth, the soft places between its scales." Sareth listened in silence. Her expression was unreadable. "You learned all this from the humans," she said when Nira finished. "They taught me to see differently," Nira admitted. "But the knowledge of the forest is mine. I have spent my whole life watching and learning because it was all I could do. Please, Mother, at least consider it." Kate appeared at the edge of the firelight. How long she had been there, Nira did not know. "On Earth," Kate said, "the greatest warriors were not always the ones who fought. Sometimes they were the ones who planned, the ones who saw what others could not." Sareth looked from the human to her daughter and back again. The fire crackled softly between them. "Show me this narrow pass," Sareth said finally. "Show me your plan, and we will see if a cub who cannot hunt might still save her clan." Nira felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. There was no time for emotion now. There was only the plan and the hope that it might work. 3 days. They had 3 days to prepare. It would have to be enough. The 3 days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Nira had never worked so hard in her life. She had also never felt so alive. She led the scouts to the narrow pass, showing them the terrain she had memorized over years of solitary exploration. She pointed out the unstable rock formations, the places where the canyon walls could be brought down with the right amount of force. She identified the ledges where archers could position themselves, high enough to be safe from the Drathern's reach, but close enough to strike at its vulnerable points. Sam Ortega worked alongside the Varani warriors, planting his explosive charges in the rock. He explained everything he did, showing them how the devices worked, teaching them to think about force and pressure and timing. Some of the warriors listened with genuine interest. Others simply grunted and did as they were told. But all of them worked. Kate coordinated communication between the human crew and the Varani scouts. She gave Nira a small device that could send signals across great distances, and she taught her how to use it. For the first time, the clan would be able to coordinate their movements, to act as one unified force rather than individual hunters. Not everyone believed in the plan. Keth made his opinions known loudly and often. "We are taking orders from a cripple," he said on the second day, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A cub who has never made a kill, who has never even completed the rite of proving. This is madness." Mira felt the familiar sting of shame, but before she could respond, Sarah stepped forward. "She has done what none of us could," the clan leader said, her voice sharp as a blade. "She has given us a chance. If you have a better plan, speak it now. If not, do your duty and be silent." Ket's ears flattened against his head, but he said nothing more. The morning of the Drathern's arrival dawned gray and cold. Heavy clouds hung low over the forest, and the air smelled of coming rain. The clan had taken their positions throughout the night, moving silently through the darkness to the places Nira had assigned them. Nira herself stood on a high ledge, overlooking the entrance to the narrow pass. Kate had fashioned a horn for her, a device that could amplify her voice so that it would carry across the canyon. Ben Harris and the other humans waited in their ship, ready to provide support if the plan failed. The wait was the hardest part. Nira could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, could hear the blood rushing in her ears. Her bad leg ached from the climb up to the ledge, but she ignored the pain. There was no room for weakness now. The ground began to tremble. At first, it was just a faint vibration, barely noticeable. Then it grew stronger and stronger still, until the very rocks beneath Nira's paws seemed to shake with each distant footstep. Birds erupted from the treetops, fleeing in screaming clouds. Small animals burst from the underbrush, running blindly in their terror. And then the Drathern appeared. The stories had not done it justice. It was a mountain of flesh and scale, a living nightmare that blocked out the sky. Its hide was dark gray, mottled with patches of green moss that had grown in the crevices of its ancient scales. Its eyes were small and yellow, burning with a hunger that had never known satisfaction. When it opened its mouth, Nira saw row upon row of teeth, each one longer than a Vorani spear. For a moment, she forgot the plan. She forgot everything except the primal terror that seized her body, the overwhelming urge to run and hide and never stop running. Then she heard Kate's voice in her ear, transmitted through the small device she wore. "You can do this, Nira. Trust yourself." Nira took a deep breath. She raised the horn to her mouth. "Light the bait," she called out, her voice carrying across the canyon below. A group of warriors set fire to the pile of carcasses they had prepared. Meat mixed with special herbs that created a thick, pungent smoke. The scent was irresistible to any predator, a promise of easy food. The Drathern's massive head swung toward the smell, and it let out a roar that shook the canyon walls. It charged into the narrow pass. "Archers ready," Nira commanded. "Wait for my signal." The beast thundered down the canyon, its huge claws tearing gouges in the stone floor. It was moving faster than Nira had expected, faster than anything that size had any right to move. She felt a spike of fear. If it reached the end of the canyon before they could trap it, the plan would fail. "Now!" she shouted. "Seal the entrance." Sam's charges detonated with a sound like thunder. The rock formations at the canyon's mouth came crashing down, tons of stone falling in a cascading avalanche. The Drathern spun around, roaring in fury, but it was too late. The way out was blocked. "Smoke!" Nira called. "Drive it forward." Warriors on the canyon walls lit bundles of burning herbs, filling the air with thick, choking smoke. The Drathern stumbled, its small eyes watering, its head swinging from side to side as it tried to find the source of its torment. "Archers now! Aim for the eyes!" Arrows rained down from the ledges, a deadly hail that found the beast's most vulnerable points. The Drathern screamed, a sound of pain and rage that echoed off the canyon walls. It thrashed wildly, smashing against the stone, trying to reach its tormentors, but they were too high. It could not climb. It could not retreat. For what felt like hours, the battle raged. The Drathern fought with everything it had, and more than once, Nira feared they would fail. 2 warriors fell from their ledges when the beast's tail swept across the wall. One was caught by his companions. The other was not so lucky dot, but slowly, inevitably, the creature began to weaken. Blood poured from 100 wounds. Its movements grew sluggish. Its roars became whimpers. "Final charges," Nira said, her voice hoarse. "Bring down the far wall." Sam detonated the last of his explosives. The canyon wall collapsed inward, burying the Drathern under tons of rubble. The beast let out one final cry, a sound of defeat and despair, and then fell silent. Dust settled over the canyon. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a cheer began to rise from the warriors on the ledges. It grew louder and louder, echoing off the walls, a sound of triumph and relief and disbelief. They had won. Nira stood on her ledge, her body trembling with exhaustion, her bad legs screaming with pain. Kate's voice crackled in her ear again. "You did it," the human said. "You saved them all." Nira looked down at the rubble that buried the ancient terror, at the warriors who were already climbing down to confirm the kill, at the canyon that would forever be known as the place where the Varani finally conquered their greatest fear. And for the first time in her life, she smiled. The celebration lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Fires burned through the clan grounds, and the smell of roasting meat filled the air. Warriors who had fought in the battle told their stories again and again, each telling more elaborate than the last. Cubs listened with wide eyes, dreaming of the day when they too would prove themselves in battle. But this celebration was different from any that had come before. For the first time in Varani history, the place of honor was not given to the hunter who had made the kill. It was given to the one who had made the kill possible. Nira sat beside her mother at the great fire, her fur brushed and gleaming, a garland of purple flowers draped around her neck. She still could not quite believe what was happening. Warriors who had never spoken to her before now approached with bowed heads, offering words of respect and gratitude. Cubs who had once mocked her twisted leg now stared at her with something like awe. On the second night of the celebration, Sareth rose to address her people. The clan fell silent, all eyes turning toward their leader. "We have always measured worth by the hunt," Sareth began, her voice carrying across the clearing. "We have always believed that strength of body was the only strength that mattered. We were wrong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Sareth raised a paw for silence. "My daughter cannot run. She cannot pounce. By our old ways, she should have been cast out, left to die alone in the forest. But if we had followed our old ways, we would all be dead now. The Drathern would have destroyed us, or we would have fled like frightened prey. abandoning the sacred grove and everything our ancestors built. She turned to look at Nira, and in her mother's eyes, Nira saw something she had never seen there before: pride. Nira saw what none of us could see. She planned what none of us could plan. She led us to victory against an enemy we believed unbeatable. And she did it not with claws or fangs, but with her mind. Sereth lifted the ceremonial spear, the symbol of the clan's highest honor. It had been carried by warriors for generations, passed from one great hunter to the next. Now she held it out toward her daughter. I declare that Nira shall be known as Kethsora, the one who sees. She will be the first of a new kind of leader among our people. A strategist, an advisor, a mind that guides our claws. Nira took the spear with trembling paws. It was heavier than she had expected, weighted with generations of history and tradition. But as she held it, she felt something shift inside her. The shame she had carried her whole life began to dissolve, replaced by something stronger. I also declare, Sereth continued, that the right of proving shall be changed. From this day forward, cubs may prove themselves not only through the hunt, but through any great service to the clan. Strength of body is no longer the only path to honor. Strength of mind, strength of heart, strength of spirit, all of these matter. The cheers that rose from the crowd were deafening. Not everyone looked happy about the changes. Nira saw Keth's face in the crowd, his expression troubled and uncertain. But most of the Varani seemed to understand that something important had happened, that their world had shifted in a fundamental way. The humans joined the celebration that night. Ben Harris was surrounded by curious warriors, asking questions about Earth and the stars. Sam Ortega demonstrated his tools for a group of fascinated cubs. And Kate sat beside Nira, watching it all with a quiet smile. "You did well," Kate said. "Better than I ever imagined." "I could not have done it without you," Nira replied. "You taught me to see myself differently. You showed me that I had value, even when I did not believe it." Kate shook her head. "I only showed you what was already there. The strength was always yours, Nira. The intelligence, the determination, the courage. All I did was help you recognize it." The next morning, the humans began preparing their ship for departure. Their survey was complete, and they had other worlds to visit, other studies to conduct. The crew worked efficiently, loading equipment and checking systems. While the Varani gathered to watch, Nira felt a hollow ache in her chest. She had known this day would come, had tried to prepare herself for it. But now that it was here, she found she was not ready. Kate found her standing alone at the edge of the clearing, watching the ship with sad eyes. "I wish you did not have to go," Nira said. "I know. I wish I could stay longer too." Kate knelt down so that their eyes were level. "But this is not goodbye forever. The Galactic Cooperative will recognize Kethvora as a protected ally world. Other humans will come. Trade ships, explorers, researchers. You will never be alone again." She reached into her pack and pulled out a small box. Inside was a collection of tools, the same ones Sam had used to teach Nira about machines and levers and traps. "Sam wanted you to have these," Kate said, "for building whatever you dream up." Nira took the box carefully, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. In many ways, it was. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Kate smiled. "The universe is vast, but it has a way of bringing people together. I believe we will meet again, Nira. And when we do, I cannot wait to see what you have built." The ship lifted off with a roar of engines and a blast of hot air. Nira watched it rise into the sky, growing smaller and smaller until it was just a bright point among the stars. She stood there long after it had vanished, the box of tools clutched to her chest. Kethsora. She turned to find her mother standing behind her. Sarath's expression was soft, open, in a way Nira had never seen before. "We have much work to do," Sarah said. "The clan must be rebuilt. New traditions must be established. And I will need your help. Nira looked down at the tools in her arms, then up at the stars where her friend had disappeared. She thought about all she had learned, all she'd become, all she still had left to do. I am ready, she said. Together, mother and daughter walked back toward the clan grounds. Nira's legs still twisted beneath her. She still could not run. She still could not hunt, but she was not worthless. She never had been Dot, and now, at last, she knew it. High above, the twin sons of Kethvora shone down on a world that was changing, a people who were learning, and a small cub with a twisted leg who had proven that strength comes in many forms. The Varani would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.